Welcome to Silent Betrayal, where shocking stories of love, lies, and betrayal unfold. Get ready for jaw-dropping tales that will make you question everything. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the truth is about to be revealed. Now, dive into today's story. Sophia stood at the doorway, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I'm heading out with the girls," she said lightly, her voice tinged with a familiarity that should have been comforting. Yet, as I glanced up from my laptop, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Maybe it was the way she avoided my eyes, or the fact that she was dressed in a sleek black dress I hadn't seen her wear in years. Her makeup was flawless, her perfume lingering longer than usual, and her hair fell in soft waves that framed her face perfectly. "Have fun," I replied, forcing a smile. She leaned in, planting a soft kiss on my cheek before grabbing her purse and stepping out the door. The sound of her heels echoed faintly as she walked away, leaving me with an inexplicable weight in my chest. I tried to shake it off. Sophia, my wife of 7 years, had always been social. As a freelance graphic designer, her work schedule was flexible, and she often met her friends or clients in the evenings. There was no reason to suspect anything unusual. Yet, tonight, a gnawing doubt crept in, one I couldn't easily dismiss. I returned to my work, my fingers tapping against the keyboard, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Sophia. I wanted to trust her. I had always trusted her. But the small inconsistencies over the past few weeks were beginning to pile up. Late nights, vague explanations, the way she seemed distracted even when we were together. Was it all in my head? Or was there something she wasn't telling me? Little did I know that this night would unravel everything I thought I knew about my wife and our marriage. Sophia and I met in college. I was a focused, slightly nerdy computer science major, while she was a vivacious art student whose creativity and charm were magnetic. From the moment we met, it was as though we balanced each other out. I grounded her when life felt chaotic, and she reminded me to live a little when I became too consumed by logic and work. After college, we got married and built a life together. I became a software engineer, working long hours to support us, while Sophia pursued her dream of becoming a freelance graphic designer. Her work brought a different kind of energy into our home, colorful, chaotic, and often inspiring. For years, we were the couple everyone envied. We had our arguments, sure, but nothing ever seemed insurmountable. We supported each other, celebrated each other's successes, and made plans for the future. Yet, somewhere along the way, the cracks began to form. Sophia's work had always required her to network and meet new people, but lately, she seemed to be out more often than usual. At first, I didn't question it. I knew her passion for her career and didn't want to seem controlling. But as the outings became more frequent, I couldn't ignore the growing distance between us. When I asked about her nights out, her answers were always casual, almost dismissive. Just catching up with friends," she'd say with a smile. But the smile never reached her eyes. The phone calls she took in hushed tones, the way she quickly swiped away notifications when I glanced at her screen. It all added up to a sense of unease I couldn't shake. And yet I convinced myself that it was just a rough patch, that every marriage had its ups and downs. I clung to the hope that things would get better, until tonight. As Sophia's car disappeared down the street, I sat in silence, staring blankly at the screen in front of me. My laptop, once a source of focus and escape, now felt like a barrier between me and the truth. The unease that had been simmering beneath the surface boiled over, demanding my attention. I reached for my phone, hesitating for a moment before opening the Find My Phone app. It was a feature we'd set up years ago, more as a convenience than a necessity. We rarely used it, but tonight I couldn't resist. Sophia's location appeared on the screen, a small blue dot moving steadily away from our neighborhood. I told myself it was probably nothing, that she was on her way to meet her friends at a restaurant or a bar. But as I zoomed in, my heart sank. The blue dot stopped at an address I didn't recognize. A house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, far from any of her usual haunts. The rational part of me tried to come up with explanations. Maybe one of her friends lived there. Maybe they were carpooling to their destination. But the longer I stared at that dot, the harder it became to convince myself that everything was fine. I grabbed my keys and jacket, driven by a mix of dread and determination. The drive felt surreal, the familiar streets blending into a blur as my mind raced with possibilities. When I finally pulled up a few houses away from the address, my stomach churned. There it was, Sophia's car, parked in the driveway of a house I didn't recognize. The house was unremarkable, a single-story home with a neatly manicured lawn and warm yellow lights glowing in the windows. It could have belonged to anyone, but tonight, it felt like the epicenter of my worst fears. I parked in the shadows, my heart pounding as I stared at her car. What was she doing here? Who lived in this house? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. After what felt like an eternity, the front door opened. My breath caught as Sophia stepped out, her laughter ringing out in the still night. She wasn't alone. A man followed her, a tall, confident figure with an easy smile. His hand brushed hers as they walked toward her car, their body language intimate in a way that made my stomach churn. I clenched the steering wheel, torn between the urge to confront them and the fear of what I might hear. The man said something that made Sophia laugh again, and the sound cut through me like a knife. Pulling out my phone, I snapped a photo, proof of what I was seeing, though I wasn't sure why I felt the need to document it. Maybe part of me hoped it wasn't real, that I'd wake up and find this was all a bad dream. But it wasn't. I couldn't sit there any longer. The weight of what I was witnessing crushed any hesitation I had left. I stepped out of the car, my hands trembling, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The cool night air hit me, but it did little to steady my nerves. Sophia! My voice cut through the quiet night like a whip. Her laughter died instantly. She froze mid-step, her head whipping around in the direction of my voice. The shock on her face was palpable, her eyes wide, with a mixture of fear, guilt, and disbelief. The man beside her stiffened, his posture defensive, as though preparing for confrontation. "Liam," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "That's my question, Sophia. What are you doing here, with him?" I gestured toward the man, who was now eyeing me cautiously. uh, this isn't what it looks like," she started, her voice shaky. "Then tell me what it is," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. The man, who introduced himself as Ethan, raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." "That's enough," I cut him off, my attention fully on Sophia. I want to hear it from her. Sophia's shoulders sagged, and she let out a shaky breath. I didn't mean for this to happen," she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "It was just, I've been feeling so lost, Liam, so disconnected, and Ethan, he listened. He made me feel seen again." Her words felt like a slap. 7 years of marriage, and this was where we were? "You didn't mean for this to happen," I repeated, my voice breaking. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ethan, sensing the gravity of the situation, muttered something about giving us space and disappeared into the house, leaving Sophia and me standing in the driveway under the harsh glow of a street lamp. "I never stopped loving you, Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I didn't know how to tell you that I felt like we were drifting apart. I didn't want to hurt you." "Well, congratulations," I said bitterly. "You've done exactly that. Now, if you took the same book, and instead of it being a copy, you would find a real—" The drive home was silent and suffocating. Sophia rode in the passenger seat, her head turned away from me, staring out the window. I couldn't bring myself to look at her. The anger I'd felt earlier was fading, replaced by a hollow ache in my chest. When we got home, I went straight to the living room, leaving her standing by the door. I needed space to think. The images from the night played over and over in my mind. Her laughter, the way she'd been with Ethan, the look of guilt on her face when she saw me. I tried to pinpoint where things had gone wrong. Was it my fault? Had I been too absorbed in work to notice that she was unhappy? Or was this something that had been brewing for years, unnoticed and unchecked? Sophia joined me in the living room, her face pale and tear-streaked. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I know I messed up, Liam. I know I broke your trust. But I want to fix this. I want to fix us." Her words hung in the air, and I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could come back from this. But the pain of her betrayal was still too fresh, too raw. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I don't know if we can go back to the way things were." "We don't have to go back," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We can move forward, together. If you're willing to try, I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Sophia and I had long, painful conversations, peeling back layers of resentment and miscommunication that had built up over the years. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I wanted to walk away, to leave the pain and betrayal behind. We decided to try couples therapy, something neither of us had considered before. Our therapist helped us confront uncomfortable truths about our relationship, how we'd both taken each other for granted, how we'd stopped prioritizing our connection in the chaos of daily life. Sophia cut ties with Ethan immediately, deleting his number and blocking him on every platform. She was transparent with me about her movements, her work, her friends, anything that could help rebuild the trust she'd shattered. It was a slow process, and there were no guarantees. I didn't know if we'd ever fully recover, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it takes immense effort to piece it back together. Sophia and I are still on that journey, and while the road ahead is uncertain, one thing is clear: relationships require constant care, communication, and commitment. If you've ever faced a situation like this, or have thoughts to share, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that dive into the complexities of love, betrayal, and redemption. Thank you for watching, and remember, every story has a lesson. Sometimes it's about learning to rebuild, and sometimes it's about knowing when to let go.